For the first 6 years of my life, my dad, he was an alcoholic. And I just remember my dad coming home drunk, screaming at my mom. My mom locked the door and my dad was kicking, trying to get at us. Their marriage just fell apart. I started building up quite a bit of animosity over the years. I put myself in some really, really dangerous situations. I just remember going home, I'm laying there in bed. What is my life about?
Welcome back to Not the Same, a podcast that brings you true stories of real people sharing their personal testimonies of transformation. I am your host, Rachel Heimberg. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Pastor Michael Brill. Michael, his wife Michelle, and their 2 daughters are currently pioneering a missionary work in the Kingdom of Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. We had the privilege of spending some time here in Manzini with them and, of course, wanted to take the opportunity to interview him. I did have his wife on the podcast last season, which was a great time. I've heard a bit of Michael's testimony here and there, but as always, I'm looking forward to hearing the rest. So, without delay, let's get started. First, thank you for agreeing with this.
No, thank you for having me.
I try not to pass up an opportunity. So just start by sharing a little bit of your childhood, where you were raised, parents' backgrounds, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So my father, he grew up in Brooklyn, in Cape Town. My mom, she was from a family where her father was Afrikaans and her mother was from England. So my dad's background, I don't really have much about him. We didn't even really know them. I mean, my grandparents on his side, both of them had passed away by the time I was born. So I don't have any memories of them and I don't really have much of their kind of family tree. But yeah, that's my dad. I was born in Secunda. Before it was called Mpumalanga. It would have been called Transvaal.
Okay.
And so I was born there in 1980. We were in Kinross, which is like a little suburb just out of there. So we were there for like 6 years because I think they were there before I was even born. So my dad got a contract there with Sasolburg, this huge company that, you know, does the petrol and all of that. My dad was an electrician, so he got a contract there. What I remember the most is that, you know, for the first 6 years of my life, the memory that I have is my dad, he was an alcoholic most of my life that I can remember. I do remember for a short period, they actually went to an Assemblies of God church.
Okay.
And those memories that I had of him were actually awesome. I mean, like those are the times where I remember him being clean, having a tie, just, you know, that's the best memory I have of him. But then the other memories that I have of that particular area, I just remember my sister, who is 2 years younger than me. I must have been about 4, maybe 5 years old. She was probably about 2, 3. And I just remember my dad coming home drunk, screaming at my mom, them fighting, going into the bathroom. My mom locked the door and my dad was kicking, trying to get at us. And then I just remember like his foot kicking through the door.
Wow.
And that memory is like probably the beginning of the worst memories that I had of my childhood. Like I said, yeah, I remember him at church. I remember when he was like that and he was calm. He was a nice guy. I mean, he was funny. In that sense, I had a great relationship with my dad from that perspective. Like even the way that I am with my girls sometimes, the way I joke with him, I'm like, I remember that about him. He had this kind of way about him. He was very sociable, but he was an alcoholic. I mean, and he liked games. He liked to go play darts with his friends, drink and play pool, do those things.
During this time, was your mom, was she just holding down the fort per se, or what? Did you work or was she at home?
So she didn't actually have a job for a period of time, but then what she did was she opened a creche.
Okay.
So the house that I remember kind of growing up in was one area of Kinross. And then I think we must have moved probably when I was about 4 or 5, because the period that I was speaking about now, we'd actually just moved probably within a space of 6 months or to a year before we left to come back to Cape Town. So my mom opened up a creche. I just remember it looking huge as a kid.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years ago, Michelle and I drove past it and I just wanted to see what this place looked like. And as I'm driving through the neighborhood, I'm like, this place is tiny. The house is tiny.
Wow.
I mean, but I'd remember it
For sure.
thinking it was massive.
Yeah. So you started school there, or did you start school when you went to Cape?
Actually, I did start school there, but I didn't finish the grade. It would have been sub A, which would be like grade 1. And I think I did the first half of the year in Evander, another suburb away from Secunda. And then within that period of time, my mom and dad decided that they wanted to come back to Cape Town.
Do you think it was to save their marriage? Were they trying? Or was it a job?
I'm actually not sure what it was. Because honestly, my mom has said over the years that she reckons that that's what messed things up.
Wow.
So even though he'd get drunk and he would kind of do that from time to time,
there was some peace.
Well, yeah, because he was still part of a community. He had people he was accountable to.
Oh.
There were people that he knew. People would kind of like, hey, where have you been? You know, it's a small town. And Kinross, the area where they were at, is even smaller, that little community there. So from what my mom has said in the past is that she reckons that because they ended up leaving and they left the church and where they were at, when they came to Cape Town's like a full city. There's access to a lot more. And that's where it went bad.
Okay.
Because it wasn't long after we went back to Cape Town that their marriage just fell apart. He just would disappear. He was gone for, nights at a time. And I thought he was working. And then later on, my mom said, no, he was just going out to bars and things like that. I mean, he'd get all dressed up and he said, he's going to work. That's all I could pretty much remember.
So what years would that have been?
I would say 1987. I can't really remember all those details, but I know that I was turning 7 that year, and that was the year that they got divorced.
Okay, so it was very quick then.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
As a child, for myself, I experienced my parents separated, and that was pretty rough looking back on it. When it happens, you just kind of like go with the flow. Obviously, I didn't have that kind of chaos with the drinking and stuff in my parents' home or anything. So I'm just curious, as a child processing that, was it like a relief to have the peace, or was it like very traumatic that your dad was gone now? How did that play out?
Yeah. No, I would say I lean towards saying probably more traumatic.
Okay.
Probably more so for my sister. I mean, over the years, she'd said things that you could see that this really affected her, but she kind of internalized everything.
For sure.
But for me, it was big. I remember telling my mom, I don't want to live with you. I want to live with dad. So he actually got a flat where it's like you could walk there in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would just be there all the time. So straight after school, I would go there. He was also about 10 minutes from our school. So we were all pretty close together at that time. And then I remember he let me stay with him for a period of time. And then he got a girlfriend. And his girlfriend had a daughter. And that was just awful. That whole experience.
That dynamic is...
No, it was horrible. She didn't treat us very well. She had an issue with us because she had her own daughter.
For sure.
It wasn't ideal. And it didn't really last. But that was enough to get me out of that apartment.
To want to go back with your mom?
Yes.
And how old do you think?
Probably around 8.
Wow, that's so young.
Yeah. From 7 to 8, it all happened pretty fast.
That seems very quick. A lot of chaos in a short amount of time. Like,
yeah.
It just seems like a lot.
I mean, I got to see things in him that was just, at the time, it shook me. So my mom was now telling us how your dad is and he had an affair and all of this stuff. She said it looked like he wanted out. He said to her, like, I had an affair, and she was trying to have mercy on it and go, okay, I understand. And he realized she's not budging here. I'm telling her the whole story. No, I actually had an affair when Michael was a baby and all of that stuff. And she's like, okay, well, then that's it.
Oh.
And then I'm not sure if he was with that girlfriend or not, but I remember this one lady who was a neighbor. She was married to another guy and she had a child. But I was a kid. I didn't know anything. And then
so many dots you don't put together until you're big.
And then one day, like, we were sitting there, we were watching TV on the couch and we were playing with the kids. And then I just turned around and I saw him kiss this lady. And I just remember thinking to myself, wow, how can you do that? She's married. But again, I was very young. It definitely affected me. I remember getting a pretty skewed view of him. And I started building up quite a bit of animosity over the years, which really built up in my teenage years. Because like when they first got divorced, I tried to live with him. That didn't work out. We were still trying to have a relationship with him. Yeah. And so we were allowed to go to him like every second weekend. There'd be times where I'd be at school and he wouldn't show up because he was supposed to pick me up at school to go with him instead of my mom.
Yeah.
Or he would show up later, or my mom would have to pick me up and then drop me off there. And those little things for a kid, I mean, they're not huge, but for me, I just remember thinking like, wow, I mean, you just left me here.
I think obviously there's something that's God given in humans, that we have those expectations of how people should treat people. And that gets skewed very, very young from abuse. Like what you witnessed, you had an idea of what was supposed to happen, right? You knew that married people shouldn't be kissing other people. You knew that dads should be there for their children. Those things no one taught you. You just know.
Sure.
And then when those break, then you're like, well, wait a minute. You can feel this is not normal.
Yes.
That's very natural until it breaks. Of course, that produces bitterness and resentment. And so your sister as well, during this time, did she always follow you?
No. In fact, she never lived with him in her childhood. She only lived with him, I think she was 19.
Okay.
And she just lived with him for like a year. And I did the same thing. So she followed in that suit, but he had 6 kids. He was married to another lady before.
Okay.
So I have 3 older half brothers and an older sister. Okay. So Karen, who's the oldest, when I was 7, I think she was 21.
Oh, wow. So your parents were quite gapped in age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this time, outside of your family life and your home life, what was school like? Did you do well? Did you get along with kids? Did the home life affect that?
No, it did. So the way that I am now and the kind of way that people see me, and even just being able to socialize with people, I wasn't as much like that when I first got to school. So around the period when my parents got divorced, we changed schools because my mom ended up leaving that area. And so I went to a new school. I remember her dropping me off at school and I was just crying. I can't remember what I was thinking, but I just remember feeling insecure.
Okay.
Being in an environment and not feeling safe. So I'm standing there and I'm crying. And I'll never forget this girl. She was a standard ahead of me. I was in standard 1, which would be grade 3. And she would have been in grade 4. And she was looking at me like, what is wrong with this boy crying?
Wow.
You know, I remember just going into class, the teacher introducing me to this whole class, and I just couldn't stop crying. It was horrible. That's probably my worst experience in school during this period.
That would have been all the trauma from
I think so.
Everything manifesting it.
I think so. To be honest, I've never really given it that much thought. But as I'm just thinking about it now and I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, yeah, it definitely was connected. I never even put that together at the time.
But your whole world had just been ripped apart.
Sure.
You moved, your parents divorced, all this chaos. Kids seem to hold it together so well when we realize that they're just grasping at any sort of normal...
Any stability.
Yeah, and it manifests itself like that. Why would you be standing there crying? It's not because of school. It's because of everything else in your life. Now you're in a new school.
Yeah.
Now you got to figure life out and you shouldn't have to be doing this at this age.
Yeah.
Did it get better?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Because around that period of time, my stepdad, he got into the picture.
Okay.
He was amazing. Even to this day, he's incredible. Like when I think about the person who raised me, he's the person who raised me. I call him dad. I mean,
for sure.
He's the one who raised me. He's the one who, to this day, he's a blessing. Treated us like a dad. Subsequently, him and my mom got divorced. My mom was like, well, what about Dennis now? Like, what? Are you still going to be in touch with him? You're divorcing him, but I don't know what you want me to. Yeah, I don't know what you want us to do. And I phoned him and I just said, Mom said this. We have had a relationship all our lives. And he's like, no, that doesn't change who we are. And it hasn't. We've been able to keep that relationship all the way till now.
When they got married? Or when he came into the picture, let me say.
About that time, about 8.
Wow.
This was all happening so fast.
This is like a roller coaster.
No, yeah. So I think they were married by the time I was 9. 8 is when I would have met him. We would just move to that place. And probably a couple of months later, this guy starts in the picture. Wow. So she starts telling me, look, I'm going to introduce you to this guy. He's a good man. He actually has a disability. His arms are disabled. So it's kind of like polio, but it's not quite. They don't have an actual name for it. But he doesn't have use of the muscles in his arms. So it kind of just hangs.
Wow.
But he's learned how to put a pen in between his fingers and he can kind of lift up his elbows. So
was it since birth or was it an accident?
It's not even an accident. It just started to happen when he was about 22. So he started losing his muscles and his arms started deteriorating, and he realized it. They went to the doctors. They have no name for this disease. They don't have a cure. They don't have anything. To this day, we don't know the name of this.
Wow.
And so my mom was like, we're going to meet this guy at a rugby game. Just don't say anything. Like, don't say anything. Don't say anything about his arms.
Worst nightmare.
Yeah. But of course,
Kids
he
are
was
kids.
friendly.
Yeah.
He was so cool.
That's
like we met him. He's like, hey, how are you? And then of course, I mean, I must have said something like, so what happened to your arms? And he was cool. Always been a cool one. I just remember kind of getting onto this rugby field because he used to have a rugby club that he ran.
Okay.
He obviously invited my mom to come and watch the game. And there were other families there. So once a month, they would have like this big, it was called a draw.
Yeah.
And they would try to raise money, but the way they raised money was selling booze to each other and doing all of that. And then at 12 years old, I became the barman. But, but
South Africans love their alcohol.
Yeah. This is the funny thing. So from my perspective, I never saw him, even the drinking with the rugby club, as a problem because my biological father was an actual alcoholic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, like you'd come home and my biological father, I would go to him on the weekends. He'd walk through, he would take a beer and 2 shots of brandy, put it in the glass and put the beer over the brandy and drink that. And you'd be like, okay, cool, fine. As a kid, you don't really know anything. And I become a barman. And I'm like, whoa.
That's just getting started.
That's insane.
Totally insane.
Yeah. Even when I used to drink, I never did that. I never did that kind of stuff. And I did some crazy things. But with my stepfather, he wasn't drinking every day. He would have
a social thing.
Yes. He did it once a month. You'd look at that. And even as a kid, you'd think, okay, I can see the difference. That kind of looks like fun. This looks destructive. So in my mind, I've got this picture of like, actually, that's okay. I tended to kind of see my stepfather in a better light.
For sure. With the stability that you needed.
And that's how I would say things got better for me.
Okay.
He was there for me. I mean, I remember being in grade 4 or 5 and they were teaching us the times tables.
Okay.
He's an accountant and he'd sit down and he'd go through the whole timetable with me and he would test me. Our teacher once a week would do like this little competition. And if you do the whole times table and you do the best and you're the quickest, then you get this little prize or whatever it is. I remember the first week that we were doing it, I failed miserably. It was terrible. I went and I told him, he said, no, we'll practice every day. We'll do this. You'll get it. And we did. And then the next week I won.
That's great.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Because that was like someone investing in me,
for sure.
Someone spending time with me, you know.
So during this time, after he comes in the picture, was there ever any church or religious thing once you got to Cape Town during this whole time?
My mom did. And my mom was pretty religious.
Okay.
She ended up going to a charismatic church and she was a home cell leader.
But still drinking on the weekends?
Yeah. Yeah, and smoking.
That is so typical of the religious world.
Yeah, no, totally. For someone like me, I never bought into that. Because the whole thing was fake.
So you saw the difference and did it bother you? The going to church but then still doing the drinking and smoking? When you saw that, you were like...
Yeah. I mean, I remember just one time being at church and watching a whole bunch of people going outside and smoking around the corner. And even as a youngster thinking to myself, this just doesn't look right.
It never looks right.
Yeah, it just doesn't look right. I mean, my mom was always telling me, like, she'd be arguing with me. And then as I'm talking to her, she'd like speak in tongues to me. So I'm looking at her, I'm like, you are crazy. You are absolutely insane. Whatever you're on, like, I'm not into that.
Wow. So that puts you off.
Totally. I mean, the encounters that I had in my mom's church was not really much. I remember being in Sunday school at about 11 years old. I remember an incident that I know was God in hindsight. I prayed a prayer to Jesus. It was like the Sunday school area. Like whatever they were doing, they were telling me about Jesus. Okay. I remember praying a prayer. And around that period, I was walking to where the church was. And I had this clear thought in my mind, you're going to be a pastor like Pastor Paul. And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I remember that thought. Fast forward, I don't really grow in my walk with God.
Yeah.
This is just an experience that I have. Maybe about 2 years later, I go to a friend's church and I go to a youth night. And this guy also pulls an altar call.
Wow.
And I'm convicted. And I lift up my hand and I pray. He says to me, the first thing you need to do is you need to tell as many people about Jesus as possible. So I said, okay, fine. But I went to a school that was next to a synagogue, right in the middle of this whole Jewish area. So all my best friends were Jewish. So I go to school and I tell all my Jewish friends about Jesus. And I lost all my friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I lose all these friends. These guys are now no longer talking to me. They're offended. Their parents don't want them to have anything to do with me. And this Jesus stint ended within about 3 weeks because I'm like, well, what's the point? This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't have church. My mom's church is, to me, that whole thing was always a joke.
Wow, yeah.
Like when the pastor came to our house for a braai, the pastor's drinking with my dad, trying to be friends with him. And I remember like just being this young guy going, this just doesn't look right. What is the point of this? There's no difference between you and them. What is the point of my dad even going to your church? What is the point of me even going to your church?
Because there's no change. What's the point?
I don't see the point of this whole thing.
Yeah.
So that was that.
Before we go too far, you said you were running the bar.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you were 12.
Sure.
Did you get into drinking as well?
Around maybe 13 is when the first time I had the guts. They had a New Year's party. And I remember just watching these guys and looking at them going, they're not going to know. Like nobody's going to know. If I take a sip of something now, everybody was so drunk. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to try this. And that was the first time that I'm like, oh, okay, that was great. And I remember feeling a little bit something, but I didn't drink enough to get plastered. After that, I would from time to time just give it a go. But I wasn't doing anything crazy. Just mischievous little stuff.
You said you kind of felt the conviction when you were like 12 or 13.
Sure.
You were doing something where you needed Jesus.
Yes.
So did it get worse from there? Or
So let me put it this way. From about 16, I got in touch with the guy who was smoking cigarettes. My mom was smoking and she was like saying to me, you must never smoke. I'm like, no, I'll never smoke. And then she had a home cell with another lady and her son was smoking. He ended up passing cigarettes to me. I ended up smoking with him. About 6 months later, around the 16-year-old period, my stepbrother gave me weed for the first time.
Okay.
Then when I tried that, I was like, wow, that was my first experience with a drug. But I didn't do it all the time. I just did it whenever we were away, go on holidays.
Did your parents ever know?
No, nobody knew. They only found out that I was smoking when I was like about 18. So I'd be smoking for a while already when my mom caught me. But then when she caught me, she tried to like have this whole thing, like, what are you doing and all this stuff. I just had attitude. I was never really having huge attitude with her, but I just said to her, actually, you know what, you smoke. What are you honestly going to do? She backed off. And then the one day she's like, we know you smoke, you can't hide it. And then I ended up smoking in front of her. Now I'm like 18, I'm allowed to smoke in front of my mom. I'm allowed to do whatever I want now. At that stage, she didn't know I'd smoked weed. By the time I was 17, I was drinking a lot more. They allowed me to have a party with my friends.
Yeah.
And nobody else was allowed to when they were 17.
We're the same generation. I mean, we're born the same year. So
Yes.
It really was our parents' generation that let their kids party in the homes.
Yes.
I didn't even have those parents, but...
Because they were like, my stepdad, he was like, rather in a place where we can see them.
Exactly. That was the mentality. But then all they did was create this environment of indulgence. And then you're already addicts. Now you turn your kids into addicts.
Totally.
And then you're the cool parents.
And they were the cool parents. Everybody thought they were. I thought they were as well.
Did you ever get any further in heavy?
Not
at
then.
That point? Okay.
No. The heavy drugs started when I left school.
Okay. Did you matric?
Yeah, I finished matric in 1998. I started studying this Microsoft engineering IT course.
Okay.
But during that period of time, I was already smoking weed and drinking a lot around the 18-year-old period. So we were clubbing a lot. The moment I got my ID and I was 18, my friends and I were clubbing all the time. I mean, I put myself in some really, really dangerous situations. I just remember one night losing my friends and then hitchhiking at like 2 a.m. And this guy picked me up. He's like asking me questions, like trying to hit on me. And I remember thinking to myself, yo, this is stupid. This is so dangerous what I'm doing. And the drunker I am, the more vulnerable I was. I even remember this one time where the bouncers would stand in front of this club. There was a colored guy, an older gentleman, and he would sell hot dogs outside of the club. So one night, I wasn't drunk, but I had enough. But there was this one guy who was plastered and he was walking home. I ended up walking with this guy, and this guy said to me, hey, why don't we rob this guy together? Like, I would never do that. But I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't want you to turn on me.
Yeah.
I looked at the guy and thought, maybe we could just get him and it could be harmless and take it and run. And
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to navigate in that situation as best as I could.
Did you end up robbing the guy?
No, he got away. Thankfully. I mean, every now and again, I think about this guy.
Yeah.
And I just think, like, I can't believe it, because he saw us and this guy, he noticed and he started to run. And then we left him. And I'm like, okay, looks like we lost him. Anyway, I'll see you around, mate.
Wow.
Those kind of dodgy situations
Yeah.
that I
Where you
allowed
think it
myself
could
to
have
get
been
into.
so much worse.
Yeah, so I had a few like that year 2000 party. Like, it was huge in Cape Town. So there was thousands of people at Clifton Beach. I drank so much, I passed out, and I woke up the next morning, like literally in the gutter of the pavement and the road. And I just checked my wallet. It's still there. I'm intact. Nothing's happened. But I remember thinking to myself, bro, this is so bad.
That's scary.
And yeah, so now that maybe 18 to 20 is when I realized how addictive I could be. Like, I would always push it to the next level. I'm getting drunker than everyone else, doing worse things than everyone else. Everybody's telling me stories about things that I did that are embarrassing. Like, Mike, you're not going to believe what you did last night. You did this, you did that.
And you don't remember?
No, I don't. And so I had already smoked weed. And I remember thinking to myself, whenever I smoke weed, I never have these stories. I still remember what's going on. I can be high, but I don't pass out. And so that was like how I convinced myself, I'm not drinking anymore, but I'm just on weed.
Wow.
And so from 19 to 21, in those 2 years, I smoked weed every day.
And it's so bad for your brain too. Like,
yeah, God has helped me, because I remember when I first got saved, someone would ask me a question and I could feel like, whoa, like time's ticking. And I'd be like, yes, I mean, honestly.
Yeah. I've heard other people say that you really lose your reaction.
No, you do. You slower.
Yeah.
I mean, the weed slowed me right down. And that was like my comfort zone. I loved weed. I mean, I had a whole philosophy on weed. I mean, I believed in it. That's my comfort drug. Like, I sleep at night because of it. That was my, like my peace.
Were you living at home this whole time?
No, at that stage, I'd left the house. I got kicked out of the house.
Okay.
So during the partying, the 3 times a week, that was at 18. At 19, I was sometimes partying like 5 times a week.
Oh.
So I was missing college, and my stepdad had paid for it. And now I'm not rocking up at college.
Okay.
All of this is happening. My dad's finding out about it. My mom's finding out about it.
Oh.
And then about that same period of time, I was drinking and smoking weed. And I got home one night and I fell asleep with a cigarette in my hand. I set the couch on fire.
Yeah.
So I wake up, the couch is on fire. I hit it out. I take these pillows and I cover it up. And I just wake up in the morning and my mom is screaming, Michael. I get up, go through. She's like, get out of my house.
Wow.
She's like, you just set my couch on fire. Get out. I'm begging her, please, Mom. I'm sorry. She's like, no, you're not sorry. If you were really sorry, you wouldn't keep doing this. You're out. So I packed my stuff. I went and stayed at my friend Jolene's house for like 2 days. And then I met my one friend, Sean, from school, and they were looking for a roommate.
Okay.
That was also when things got really bad for me, because they were smoking weed every day.
For sure.
You know the cones you see on the street? So they had this cone and they took piping, put it in there and made this huge bong out of it.
Oh, wow.
Everybody loved it. I mean, I smoked weed, but I'm like, wow, this is
like the next level.
Yeah, this becomes my life for this period of time.
So that kind of is what pushed you into this more.
Into that,
weed
smoking
chaos.
weed every day, that kind of thing, because that's what we do. So my dad remarried after my mom got divorced. I was probably about 14. My stepbrother was 15. Okay, so we became kind of friends. For 6 months, I lived with him.
Okay.
Claudette was who my dad married. Greg was my stepbrother. So it was just me and Greg and Dad and Claudette. So we were there for 6 months. He was also a bit of an influence with the weed. Okay, so I smoked weed for the first time with him. And then I did ecstasy for the first time with him too.
Wow.
But I hadn't seen him for like a couple of years. So I bump into him at this club in Newlands. He's like, Mike, you got to try this. So I take this ecstasy pill. And now all of a sudden I'm doing this and I'm loving it. I'm loving that life, but I'm trying to keep my life together because you can do this on the weekends, but you can't do this during the week.
Yeah.
So you can club and drink in the week and function the next day at your job, but you can't do that with ecstasy. Ecstasy knocks you out for the whole day because you can't go to sleep. Then the next day, you go to sleep the whole day
to recover.
And you kind of smoke weed to bring you down and then sleep on the weed until you wake up later. That's kind of what I was doing every weekend. So I'd be taking ecstasy on a Friday night, go party. And then I had friends who we met at the clubs who would start giving us cocaine. They'd be giving us cocaine, saying to us, like, listen, if you take this while you're doing this, it's better. And it was. This one kid who looked younger than me, I remember him in the nightclub, and these clubs are very dark. And there's this lights and music, and everyone's just rushing to this music. But I remember turning around once and watching this kid have this epileptic kind of like he was overdosing. A couple of people who looked like they worked there just picked him up, took him away. And I just remember sitting there looking at him going, he obviously couldn't handle it.
Like,
You know, just like that.
Wow.
You hear things about people double dropping. In the beginning, you're scared to take 2 tablets in one night because you hear this. But then the first time a friend says, no, I've done it plenty of times. It's never happened to me. So you take a second tablet and then you take a third. I mean, one night I lost count how many tablets I took. I have no idea. It could have been between 4 and 8. I just remember.
You literally could have overdosed.
Oh, yeah. I remember this one time, my friend Jolene, she made friends with this dealer. It was the first time we ever did this where we had a house party, but it was just like drugs the whole night. So usually we would take it, go to a club and party, and then come back and then go wind down for the next day at a house. But he was there whole night and he was giving it to us. Some he gave free, I think. I'd never had so much access to these tablets at one go. I remember at the end of it thinking that was probably a bad idea. But at the time, we'd been doing ecstasy for like now nearly the second year.
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't rushing the way I was the first time.
For sure.
Okay, I need something more. Around that period of time, 6 months before I met Michelle, I met a guy who introduced me to meth.
Okay.
He says, you do it before you even drop your pill, you're going to love it. So I would snort the speed, then later drop your pill. And I'm like, wow, this thing lasts longer.
Just extend it.
So now all of a sudden I'm feeling similar to the beginning days when you first tried it. And now I'm like, okay, I've got to add stuff to this. So near the end, within the 6 months, I was now doing ecstasy, cocaine, and meth, mixing it.
Wow.
So the first time I took meth, I didn't sleep for 3 days. And I'm on this buzz. I'm with these guys that I'm not used to being with. They were real dodgy, actually. We didn't bath for 3 days. That's not who I am. Even in the midst of all my stuff, I'd shower. But I realized on this stuff, you don't even think about it.
Wow.
Only after the 3 days had passed, I remember like trying to recalibrate at the end of it, going, was that 3 days? I hadn't showered.
Probably not eating.
Mess. Yeah, I don't think we ate.
Most people say they don't.
Oh man, if I had to show you pictures, I was so skinny.
Yeah.
I'd lost like so much weight. I was
You're
like,
a tall guy.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah, that was like when I realized, okay, this is a bit scary. Then the guy who introduced me to meth, he had a friend, and this guy's brother, he never hung out around us. But one night we go partying together, and this was now getting close to the end where I get this opportunity to go to America. So this is now 2001. I'm 21. I have like the best party of my life. I get this money from my aunt, my mom. We go partying for a couple of days. I mean, I'm living the life. But when I come down from this whole thing, I just remember going home. I'm sitting in bed. I'm laying there and I'm like, what is my life about?
Yeah.
I remember this. I'm 21 years old. I've lost 2 years after school. I dropped out of college because of this whole drug thing. I have no future and I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know what life is about. I don't know the purpose of life. And I'm not talking to God.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking like that. So my mom comes to me and says, there's this opportunity to go to America for 6 months, this work-away program. And I remember thinking, I need to get away from my friends.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to pull my life together if I can't remove myself from this. So my mom organizes the interview and I go party the night before.
Oh my God.
I don't go to sleep. I walk into the interview. I'm still buzzing a little bit.
There's no way those people didn't know you were flying on drugs.
I don't know, but I look different than anyone else. I was wearing my psychedelic blue colors, like when you've been raving the whole night. Everyone comes to the interview looking like white shirt, and I've just been clubbing.
So I have this mental picture of you being young, like it's all good, whatever.
I had peroxided hair. So she's friendly. She asked me the questions. I smooshed my way through the whole interview. I get the job.
Wow.
9/11 happens. After that, we have all these issues. But around 2001, I think November, I rock up there at Boca West, which is in Florida.
And the program was working with...
This one was a country club.
Okay. In Florida.
Yes.
Okay.
Like 40 minutes from Miami.
Okay.
So that's where we worked. And so when I got there, they were doing the whole orientation week, but Michelle was there like the week before us. I just remember walking through and seeing her like, wow.
Did you ever have any serious girlfriends during all this time?
I had 2 girlfriends for 6 months each.
Okay.
The first girlfriend I had when I was like 17 years old, like she totally broke my heart. So that was the first time where I really felt rejected. And in hindsight, obviously all of that was so superficial.
Yeah.
And it was just attention.
For sure.
So I had this one girlfriend, and then I started to kind of realize, oh, people can hurt you like this. So then I started to totally change who I was. At first, I was kind of a little bit more nice and being a nice guy. But then I saw like, oh, this doesn't actually work. So I'm like, okay, fine. If that's what I need to do, I need to do that. I just kind of realized if you come across with this bravado or this attitude, it seems to work better.
It's this persona.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I totally put on this persona for the club vibe. I learned how to be this kind of guy.
Yeah.
It was just so stupid.
Yeah. But it's the cool guy vibe.
But that's who you become.
Yeah.
So by the time I got to Florida, that was working for me. So I was flirting with all the girls on the bus. Half of it was just a joke. Yeah. I didn't really care about all of these things. I'm just doing it for a laugh to kind of protect myself.
Yeah, what it is control. When you can do that, then you control the narrative.
Totally.
You're not waiting to be hurt. It's exactly what it is.
That's actually a brilliant way to put it. So I meet Michelle. I like her, but Michelle's Michelle. She's unlike any other girl I've met. She's not paying any attention to me. She's beautiful. She's different. She's not giving me this attention. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Okay, what is going on here? So I want to get to know her more. So I go talk to her. I ask her age. Hey, how old are you? 26. I'm like, hey, you're not too old for me. So she says, how old are you? I'm like, 21. She says, well, you're way too young for me. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted.
Exactly.
So now I made up my mind. I'm trying to get her to be with me, and it's kind of not working at all. She's not interested. I'm flirting with her. It's not working. Then one day she grabs me at work and she says to me, you know, the way that you flirt with all these girls, you're actually going to hurt somebody's feelings. And I'm thinking, what is your problem?
Like, it's so Michelle, though. I love it.
I'm like, who are you? Like, who do you think you are? She's always been able to call me up on my nonsense.
Yeah. But that's probably what drew you to her in the beginning was this is like nothing I've ever encountered.
Yeah. I've always liked that. And even throughout the years, that part of her, it's been good for me. It's worked well together, I think. Then what ended up happening was I walked away from the situation. I'm like, okay, this is not working. This whole persona thing that I have, I know who I really am. I know this thing is made up. I know that she's seeing the side of me that I'm letting everybody see, but I need her to know who I am.
Yeah.
So every lunch break, she'd hang out just quietly. Everyone else is doing their thing and having this whole Miami vibe. And her and her friend would sit quietly by themselves at lunch. So I just started to sit with them and just tone it down, calm down, and just get her to know me for who I actually am.
Yeah.
And then eventually, within maybe 2-3 weeks, it's working. And now all of a sudden, we're together. Okay. So now we're dating for maybe a couple of weeks to a month. Now we're at my place and we've got this music playing, and she just turns to me and she's like, hey, Mike, where do you think you're going to go when you die? I'm like, what kind of a question is that? Like, I don't know, heaven. She's like, why heaven? I'm a good person. Good people don't go to heaven. So I'm like, if good people don't go to heaven, who goes to heaven? Those who are born again and have given their lives to Jesus. I know she must have spoken about Jesus, but this conversation was now in my face and I can't get out of this. So now I'm getting worked up and I start getting upset. Now, we'd already been together. We've had sex outside of marriage. I said, what stops you from going to heaven? And she starts naming things that I'm doing wrong. Drinking, drugs, sex outside of marriage. I'm looking at her. I'm like, sex outside of marriage? Are you crazy? Like, you telling me that you and I have been together. Like, you're like every other Christian I've ever met. I start swearing at her. I'm telling her all of these things, but she remains calm. And she goes, if what I'm saying to you isn't true, why are you getting so upset? And I burst out crying. I just burst out crying. I went into the kitchen because I don't cry in front of girls.
Yeah.
Like, I'd always keep it together. I try my best. And I'm thinking, bro, pull it together. You don't cry in front of girls. What's going on here? And this thought of what I'm saying to you isn't true. Why does it upset you so much? All of these thoughts are coming back to me. The time I prayed, the Jewish people telling them about Jesus, these little encounters, it's like God reminded me, hey, you know I'm real. But at that stage, I was so far from God. Religion is the opium of the masses. That's what I believed. I'm so into drugs. I'm like, no, religion is a man-made thing. But here I'm experiencing something that I've never experienced. It was almost like God going, bro, you can't run.
Yeah, you knew the truth.
Totally. And so I'm standing there going, I don't know how I know that this is true, but God, if this is you, then what do you want from me? I'm thinking this.
Yeah.
So I go back inside and I go to Michelle and say, okay, fine. I hear what you said. Let's say what you're saying is true. What do you want from me? Like, how do we go from here? She says, you just got to pray and ask God to help you. I said, fine, even if I pray, you've told me these things will take me to hell. I can't change that. So she's like, no, the Bible says he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. Somehow I believe that. I'm like, okay, fine. So what must I do? Pray a prayer with me. So she leads me in this sinner's prayer. And immediately after I prayed this prayer, I know I did the right thing.
Did you feel instantly weight?
Totally.
Wow.
I totally felt the peace of God's forgiven me.
That's crazy.
I knew that. I felt real relief.
For sure.
And real forgiveness.
Yeah.
So now I believe in Jesus. I believe that he's real. I've now had an actual encounter with God because I've never felt an atmosphere change before. The only time I've ever felt something that I consider an atmosphere change is if I took ecstasy.
Yeah.
The whole world around you feels different and your skin feels different.
Wow.
But now I'm standing there and I remember just feeling like this whole room feels different all of a sudden. And I remember thinking that has to be God.
For sure.
So that helped me to realize something supernatural just took place.
Yep.
2 weeks later is when it kicked in. So there was this girl, Leslie, she walked past and I'd pinched Leslie's bum 100 times when she walked past. And she'd laugh and nobody knew. I did it quietly. Leslie's walking past. I'm about to do this. And this thought comes into my mind, don't do that.
Wow.
And I don't. But I'm taken back because I'm like, what was that?
Yeah.
And then immediately that scripture came into my mind. Now remember, I haven't read my Bible. The only scriptures I know is what she's told me.
Yeah.
But this comes back to memory immediately. And I remember standing there going, wow, God, is that you? Because if that's how you're going to change me, I'll listen.
Wow.
Now, I was still smoking. I had no conviction on that. I had no conviction on drinking completely.
Those things always come in time.
Yes.
Salvation is a moment and then a path.
Absolutely.
God starts the change, and then along the way, you got to keep making those decisions.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. I just think it's cool that you're like, nope.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what God does, transforms you.
Yes.
Even though you're not who you're supposed to be yet, you're still different from what you were yesterday.
Totally. And the contrast was so huge. That was what was amazing to me. I think that second encounter, coupled with the first experience, kind of helped me. It ended up working into our relationship because we were still together. Now I kind of know something that I didn't know before.
But now you're feeling the guilt. Now you know. It's knowledge.
Totally.
Yeah.
So now we actually come to a conclusion. But I remember her saying to me, when we get back to Cape Town, we can't be living together. Okay. So we did make up our mind and we stopped having sex before marriage, but we were still staying together.
Yeah.
But Michelle said to me, no, we can't actually be living together. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I go, okay. And I remember just thinking clearly, you know what? I already know I want to marry this girl. So I just turned to her and I'm like, well, then would you marry me? And she just went, yes. And I'm like, okay, cool. This was probably like a month or two after I prayed that prayer. We've both understood that we want to marry each other. And then we decided we're going to go to the UK after Florida. We come to South Africa for about a month or something. We meet each other's families. Tell my mom this is a girl I'm going to marry. We've already had our trip to the UK planned. We end up going in June 2002. And then by November, we were married. 6 months after that, we were kind of fighting a lot, arguing. We got into this one fight. She threw an ashtray at me. I went to the bar. I'm sitting there drinking at the bar thinking, I'm going to leave this chick. And I can't handle all of this because the first 6 months for me were rough. I just remember thinking, I'm going to leave her. I'm going to get on a flight, go back to South Africa. She's not even going to know about it.
Wow.
But then I remember always saying to myself, the girl I married, I'm going to stay with her because I'm not going to do what my dad did.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you've had the experience, both your mom and dad.
Yeah, both of them were married 3 times. But I'm at the bar and I'm just thinking, but I don't have kids. So it's like, now would be the time. Before we have children and we affect other people's lives, that's what we'll do. And I just remember this thought comes into my mind, don't do that. You know, you said for better, for worse. You said for richer, for poorer. In hindsight, I know that was God.
For sure.
I am 100% convinced that was God reminding me of the words that came out of my mouth. So I went back to the house and I reconciled with her. This was the beginning of me working on my marriage. But again,
you still don't have a church.
No, I still think I'm a Christian because I believe in Jesus now.
For sure.
We end up coming to South Africa just for a quick trip. And on the weekend after we came back, we go to this little bistro and Michelle Youssef, our first pastor's wife, had a pile of flyers on the table. Michelle just walks past and says, is this for a church? She takes it. She puts it on our dressing table in our room. We're in this house share. And every single day when I'm walking past this flyer is like staring at me. I keep on looking at it. Now I can't remember what it said. Something like, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
And it just keeps on drawing me to it. And then Michelle's kind of bothering me. We need to go to church. So we go to the church. As we rock up to the first service, we're late. We find the building, but as we're getting up there, I'm like, if this church has already started, I'm not going in. So we get there, we go down the stairs, and it was like a little hall where you kind of peek your head around the corner. So I peek my head around the corner and I see these people clapping and they're singing. So I'm like, sorry, babes, I'm out of here. We start walking up the stairs. And as we're walking out, the usher comes out of the building and he goes, wait.
Wow.
Don't go. Okay, I'll never forget that. So I turn around feeling so awkward. I'm like in shorts and I'm wearing slops. And he goes, wait, don't go. I'm like, oh, you guys have already started. He says, no, come. So I go in.
I love it.
And he plonks me right in the front. Pastor Peter Ajala was doing a revival and he is preaching like, you think you're a Christian, but you never go to church. I'm like, I do think I'm a Christian. And no, we don't ever go to church. He's like, the problem is we serve a faithful God, but he needs faithful people. And this is what I'm hearing. And I'm convicted. And then he pulls an altar call. And I've never really been in a church where they pulled an altar call. My hand shoots up and I pray this prayer. As I'm praying the prayer, I made up my mind, okay, God, I will do this.
Wow.
And I made up my mind that I'm going to go to every service.
Like you're there. This is your church now.
But I didn't know we had 3 services a week. In my mind, I thought church was only a Sunday thing.
For sure.
So we came to church that Sunday. We came the following Sunday. And then somewhere along the line, I hear the announcements. There's a midweek service. My pastor also follows up on me and says, we're going to go to this revival. All I remember from the sermon is you go to church on a Sunday. By the time it gets to next Sunday, you don't even feel like you can live for God anymore. That's why we need a midweek top up. And I'm like, I do. I will go to every service that is there. And from that moment until now, that's it.
Wow.
The rest, from my perspective, is history. God, you're first now.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because everyone's encounter is so different. That's why I love doing this. Michelle says something and you listen and then you act on it. And then the next encounter, another question, and you're like, you're right. And then you change that. And then the next one, you're right.
Yeah.
And I love that God was so direct with you.
Yes.
It was, this is what you needed to hear then.
Yes.
Now you're on the right path. Now this is what you need to hear. And this and this. Some people, it happens all at once. Some people, it takes a long time.
Yes.
I love that it was just so direct.
Even the way you're explaining that, I feel like God's been like that throughout my walk with him. Even up until when Pastor came, I always find a groove that I get into.
Yeah.
And then God shows me something else.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody in our family has a marriage like Michelle and ours, even though we had some rough patches.
Yeah.
We have a great marriage.
Mhm.
Okay. Pastor Heimberg comes and he starts preaching and he says, have you ever considered asking God for a better marriage? And that moment for me was the same like every one of these revelation moments where I sit there going, I pray for my marriage every day in morning prayer, but I never considered to ask for a better one. And then my prayers started to change. And when that happens to you, then even the way you talk changes.
Absolutely.
Because now I will talk about it the way I hear pastors talk about it. It can always get better.
But
you don't think like that.
Yeah, we don't think like that. And that applies to anything in our life. We realize it's very human nature. If it's good, it's good enough. If it's not bad, it's fine.
Of course.
Never mind that anything that we do can be better.
Yes.
Our ministry can be better.
Yes.
Our relationship with our kids can be better. Anything can be better.
Yes. Why not ask for more if that's what God wants?
Yeah. So when did you come into the church there in the UK and get saved?
13th of July, 2003.
And now we fast forward and that's
22 years. Yeah.
In that you've pastored twice?
This is the third one.
Yeah. So you did twice and this is your first time
as a missionary. Yes. Second time pioneering, which I love. Yeah. So by the time you guys came, we'd already started evangelizing.
Yes. And how long did you live in Eldos?
7 years.
Okay.
We got there in 2017.
And then you left in 2020.
Last year, 2024. So yes, just under 7 years.
And now you've been here just past a year.
The anniversary of the church was the 7th of April. Yeah, it's amazing though.
Amazing.
This part of our journey is amazing. I mean, sometimes I can't believe that we're even here. Focusing on vision and future always helps me to keep on pulling myself forward. I feel privileged that we got to do anything that we got to do. Who I am now and who I was then is not the same person.
For sure.
You realize how important change is.
As we wrap this up, did you ever in a million years think that you would be where you are looking back on that little boy?
When I told you earlier that I was like laying in my bed and thinking, what is life all about?
Yeah.
Every now and again, I just remember that. And that touches me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wow, God, you've given me a life, an actual life that I can be proud of.
Yeah.
Yes, eternity, a destiny and a purpose and all that, but an actual life. That time I was probably 21 years old. I'm not 45 years old. I've had 24 years since then. There's been ups and downs. Life's been tough, but I've had a good life.
Yeah.
In the worst part that I ever experienced, God still took me through those things.
Yeah.
I never went back to that old life.
Yeah.
Like I have something that we get to take with us into eternity. Even like these two girls.
Yeah, I was going to say, your daughters will never know anything of what you went through as a child. That's the beauty of that. I love the idea that God takes that broken, what is this all for? This is what it's for.
Yes.
This is what it should be for.
Yes.
These two beautiful girls who are such a blessing to you in the ministry.
Yes.
A wife who's followed you all over the place. The church, these young people. And it really is like, that's the purpose.
Yeah.
God is so good. Thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time to share that. And hopefully other people will see wherever you're at, it doesn't have to be there. It can be more.
No, I believe that. No, thank you, Rachel. This was amazing. Just even having the opportunity to rethink all of these things.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you listening. Without a listener, the story can't be heard. If you would like to contact me with questions, comments, or ideas, please do so through the dedicated podcast email, notthesame.cfm@gmail.com. If you get a chance, take a moment to rate and review on whatever platform you're using, subscribe, follow, but most of all, please share. Last but not least, I want to encourage you to take a moment and examine your heart. If you're not a Christian or even unsure about it, you can be. John 3:16 says God loved us so much that he sent his only son to die for our sin. A simple prayer is all it takes. Acknowledge your sin, recognize Jesus paid for that sin on the cross, and sincerely ask him for forgiveness. And you can begin again. Until next time, this is Rachel Heimberg, and you've been listening to Not the Same.